So The Killers has been dubbed the Citizen Kane of film noir, but what it also did is make a star of Burt Lancaster who Lee Marvin so memorably tabbed in The Professionals. One of my favorite lines, he called Burt the whirlingest dervish of them all. Our two special guests who will be talking with me on stage after this know more about Burt than probably anyone else. So please welcome my friends Kate Buford, the author of Burt Lancaster, An American Life, and Susie Lancaster, Burt's widow, who will join me on stage to talk about everything about Burt. And Kate and Susie are here, and give them a round of applause. Susie, just to start this, Burt was kind of, from what I understand, a very forward, progressive-looking guy. He wasn't one to really reminisce, but did he ever share anything with you about the Killers or anything like that?
He really wasn't one to reminisce, but he thought she was totally gorgeous. And I'm sure you could feel the chemistry between them, especially when they had that kiss. That was the real thing. That was the real thing. And but really he did not reminisce about the old films. He was always interested in the next project, stretching himself, just exploring and experiencing, and that's really what he was all about, was the next project.
Your book, Kate, and matter of fact, I always like giving an honest plug, and Kate's book about Burt Lancaster, An American Life, is just a superb biography. It really is.
Thank you.
And the title, An American Life, what struck you about Burt that was so uniquely American?
Well, if I can tell a little story, maybe.
This is the place for it.
The genesis of this book, which will answer your question, was in 1981. I went to see Atlantic City. That's when that movie came out. And I hadn't thought about Burt Lancaster in years. And a group of us who were in Charlottesville, Virginia, decided to go to the local art theater and see Atlantic City. Got great reviews and all that. And I said, wonder what Burt Lancaster's up to. And watched this movie, and there was one key scene for me that sort of triggered these old memories. If you've seen the movie, he's just killed the two bad guys, this schmuck guy who's always been a loser, Burt Lancaster, in this movie. He kills two bad guys, and he and Susan Sarandon are on the lam in a motel room. And they're watching the news coverage of their crime, and he's so gleeful. He's finally killed somebody, and he's exulting in this crime. He's finally pulled off. And he's lying on a bed next to Susan, and suddenly stands up next to the bed, but he does it totally with his abdominals. He just stands up with his grace. And I thought, oh, he's still in shape. I mean, he still has these great abs. Yeah. And it brought back these memories of this commanding, graceful screen presence. I had no idea of writing a book. This was 1981. Well, then the DVD was invented. You could watch almost any old movie you wanted to watch. And the one person that sort of kept circulating through my head was Burt Lancaster. So I began to watch his movies, just, as kind of a hobby in between having two babies and, diapers and all of that. And what I began to see, to answer your question, was here was a movie star whose whole career settled into periods like an artist's. So it starts off in the late 40s with noir. Then in the 50s, in the early 50s, with the swashbucklers like the Crimson Pirate, yeah. Flame and the Arrow, he becomes Mr. Muscles and Teeth. Hal Wallace insists he gets those teeth capped. Yeah. You see the old teeth in this movie, and Last Night in Sorry, Wrong Number. And then he starts to play more dark, problematical roles, Sweet Smell of Success, at the same time as Gunfight at the OK Corral. Heroic roles like Sergeant Warden. And as the decades go on, he just kept shifting and changing and going into different periods. And I thought, how did he get the power as a movie star to shape a body of work like that? But what I saw in the entire body of work was he was trying to speak to the mainstream American audience in his best movies to mirror back the society they were living in. And so, as a great American star, that's really what he was doing. He was trying to reflect back. He really had a quiet mission in his own way, even though he wouldn't ever have stated it like that. But he was trying to speak to his times through the best of his movies. And that's what struck me. And no one had ever connected those dots of this remarkable career. So that's what I think he is as an American icon.
And part of Burt's early life, growing up in East Harlem, and all of that, a lot of that really shaped him and never left him. His upbringing, and talk a little bit about that, Susie, and then his loyalty and these lifelong friendships, particularly Nick Cravat, and all of that, and Burt's
growing up
characteristics.
in Harlem, you know, the streets were tough, and there were a lot of gangs and fights, and in fact, Burt once got stabbed in the thigh. So there's a group in New York called Union Settlement.
Union Settlement.
And it's like the YMCA here. And Burt got involved with them, and he was very grateful to how they helped, shaped him as a kid and keep him out of trouble and what have you. Not only because of Union Settlement, but because of being in the military. And his mother. His mother was really a very special lady, and taught him honesty and integrity, and this was always very important to him and his brothers and sisters. And as far as friendships go, Nick Cravat included, who was the little fellow that played in many of the films with him. He didn't say much, he was usually a mute, but I'm still friends with all the kids. And Burt, no matter from going to the circus to first starting out to really making a lot of money and doing very well, he never forgot his old friends. And he had the same agent and the same business manager, and many of the same people were in his life throughout his life, and they meant a lot to him. You know, they were that handful of real close friends. Others were acquaintances, but he never forgot his friends, which is a nice trait.
One friend of mine, the late actor Paul Pacerni, who was here some years ago as a guest, was in The Scout Hunters with Burt, and Nick was there. And he watched them play handball, and they got into a fight because they were so competitive. They were in the circus together, and he said, I thought these guys were going to kill one another. And I think it was Sidney Pollack said, oh no, this is just what they're like all the time. And, you know, and it was just that hyper competitive. But going back to Burt and the Killers and all of this, to say that he was an instant sensation, I don't know of any other parallel in Hollywood. I think, and please jump in here, Kate, he was in a play that was kind of a flop, but he got spotted right away and got signed, even though the play wasn't any good.
Well, it's fun because funny that in the movie tonight, Sam Levine plays the lieutenant.
Right.
And Sam Levine was in this play. It was called A Sound of Hunting in the late 1945. And Lancaster had just gotten back from Italy, where he was in a special service division following Mark Clark's Fifth Army up the boot of Italy. And he'd just gotten back, hadn't mustered out, was still in a uniform, and was riding up an elevator in the Royalton Hotel on 44th Street. And somebody spotted him, and they were trying to find someone to play a sergeant in this, what was called a dugout drama, a wartime drama at the Lyceum Theater in New York. And he looked the part, so they had him. They cast him, and the play lasted 3 weeks. It was called The Sound of Hunting. Sam Levine was in it, and all the studios were starving for new talent, new faces, like you said. So all the studios sent representatives out, scouts, to look at this play, and everyone had their eyes on this blonde, tall, beautiful, you know, iconic newcomer in the corner, and the offers flooded in. And he was brought out to Hollywood and signed with Paramount with Hal Wallace. But he had an agent, Harold Hecht. And he had just got an agent, Harold Hecht. And Harold got him this really interesting contract where he had one outside option in addition to the Paramount contract. And Mark Hellinger jumped on that outside option for the Killers.
Yeah, I think one of the, to take that a little farther, there was a guy named Marty Jurow who was Wallace's assistant, and actually, you know, the film trivia buffs, when you say, what was Burt Lancaster's first film, and you say The Killers, and they go, haha, no, it was Desert Fury, because technically he was in Desert Fury, and he had kind of, not a minor role, but a secondary supporting kind of role, and there was some 16mm footage of his screen test. Well, Hellinger did have friends, and he was looking for a new leading man. And so Jura took this footage of the screen test, took it over to Hellinger and said, I think you may take a look at this, but please, for God's sakes, if it gets back to Wallace, I'll get fired I did this to you. And then Hellinger, in a roundabout way to protect Jura, brought him in and hired him. And another little postscript to that, our mutual friend Mickey Knox, who Mickey was an actor and a dialogue coach for years, and he was under contract to Hal Wallace, who had left Warner Brothers, was an independent producer, and that was when Wendell Corey, Elizabeth Scott, and Kirk Douglas, and Wallace had this whole stable of stars. And
Mickey Knox was the shadow last night coming up the stairs.
He was the shadow, and Sorry, Wrong Number. Yeah, that Mickey said that was one of the highlights of my acting career. One time he told me that. But Mickey remembers Hal Wallace signing Burt, and then when it came down to a certain point of Burt, I don't think there was anybody that got full of themselves and more confident quicker in Hollywood than Burt. And the contract after a while got restrictive, and I said, well, how did Burt get out of his contract? He said, well, he told Hal Wallace he was going to throw him out a window. He didn't release him. This was Burt. And Burt did have this reputation of having that temper, but it was never about arrogance or ego. It was about the work and what he wanted to do. And by the time you and Burt came together in 1983, I think the lion had mellowed a little bit. But talk a little bit about Burt and what he brought to bear about how it was the work, not the glitz.
Absolutely the work. He was extremely professional, and he expected everybody else to be very professional. And you alluded earlier to a little story that happened on The Professionals with Lee Marvin. Everybody's on set, they're ready to shoot. No Lee Marvin. So Burt's asking, where the hell is Lee Marvin? What the hell's going on here? Come on, we've got a schedule, blah, blah, blah. So somebody said he's in town in the bar. So Burt gets on the horse or on something or other that was there and rides into town and finds Lee Marvin, gets him by the shoulders like this and says, what the hell are you doing? We're shooting a movie, We've got to do this correct. Get your act together. And he was very upset with him. And then after that, for the rest of the film, Marvin shaped up and was there on time, and they shot the rest of the picture. But he was a true professional and cared about every aspect of the film. When I first started watching his films and noticing him, not like tonight and last night, but I always noticed that when there was a kiss or an embrace, his would be the face that would turn away from camera, and he would always give that shot to whoever he was playing the scene with. And it was disappointing to me because I wanted to see more of him, but yet it showed how giving he was, and he really was. He cared about everybody, doing well, and the project doing well, and that's what it was all about with him.